Well, the recent surge in anti-police rhetoric has been matched, maybe not surprisingly, with a corresponding surge in anti-police violence. That includes the recent death of NYPD officer Myosotis Famia, who was assassinated in a patrol car last week in the Bronx. None of it has been enough to mute liberals, some of whom at Salon.com, days after the shooting, ran a piece entitled, "America is Suffering from a Plague of Deadly and Unaccountable Racist Police Violence." The author of that piece, Celisa Kalakal, joins us tonight. Celisa, thanks for coming on.
Hi, Tucker. Thanks for having me.
So I guess I have a more nuanced view of this. I think that there is behavior by police, as there is by every sector of society, that's impossible to excuse and that should be cracked down on. I guess what I disapproved of in your piece was the generalizations that you made, that police as a group are racist and violent. And I wonder how you reached that conclusion.
Well, in my piece, I never actually said that police are racist. What I talk about is police violence and the rate of police officers who kill civilians in recent years. If you look at the numbers, in 2015 and 2016, over 1,000 people have been shot and killed by police officers. Those numbers don't lie. And this year, over 500 people so far have been killed by police. So what I'm talking about is police violence that kills a lot of people, and a lot of those people are unarmed or they don't pose a threat to officers, and those are alarmingly high numbers. So in my piece, I never say that police are racist, but they can get violent very quickly, as we've seen in a lot of...
Right. I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to contradict you because you seem sincere, but I don't know if you can see, we've got the headline of your piece up on the screen right next to you. It says, and I'm quoting, "America is suffering from a plague of deadly, unaccountable, and racist police violence." A plague of it. That seems like a generalization. Now, I would agree with you completely. Any shooting is too many shootings, but this is complicated stuff. And so to dismiss it, as your piece did, as racist without proving that seemed unfair and not really like journalism.
Well, if you look at the demographics of the people that are killed by police, disproportionately a number of them are black and brown people. Black people are 3 times more likely to be killed by police than white people. And in a lot of cases, 69% of black people that are shot and killed by police are actually unarmed, or they didn't pose a violent threat. So in my piece, I show that police violence disproportionately affects the black and brown communities, more so than other communities. So
okay, well, but they're also much higher. I mean, this is again a complex matter, and there are much higher crime rates in those communities for who knows why, but there are, and so that may be a factor in this. But here are some numbers that I think show just how complicated this is. So there was a study a couple of years ago of the about 2,700 police shootings between 2013 and 2015, and I'm quoting now, found that the odds of a black suspect being killed by a black officer were consistently greater than the odds of a black suspect being killed by a white officer. That doesn't prove anything necessarily, but it does maybe show that racism isn't as simple in this context as you're making it sound. If a black suspect's more likely to be shot by a black cop, then what does that tell us about racism?
Well, I think what it tells us is we have to look at the system and not the individual police officers that are killing these people. Systematically, the way police officers are trained, they're taught to go for violence first. In a lot of states, they don't tell police officers to resort to other means to subdue a subject other than shooting and killing them. So
okay, but hold on, right, there are 2 different things. Whether non-lethal force ought to be used first is a valid question, but I want to get to the question of race. So, and I'm quoting, white officers statistically less likely than black officers to kill black suspects. So if all cops are being taught to be racist, why are black cops more likely to shoot black suspects? It doesn't really make much sense, does it?
No, you're looking at it individually. It needs to be looked at as a systemic.
Looking at the numbers.
No, it's supposed to be. You have to look at it in a systemic way, where you look at the system that allows these police officers to commit these acts of violence, and then they don't get held accountable for it. We've seen time and again police officers getting off on killing another person. Geronimo Yanez, who was shot and killed, Philando Castillo, he was acquitted of all charges.
I mean, again, I don't want to be mean, but you're maybe dodging the point a little bit. I think some of the issues that you're raising are valid issues. I don't want anybody to commit brutality against anybody else, and I mean it. But to charge that racism is at the core of this without any evidence, because you actually don't have any evidence at all, and there's some countervailing evidence, makes people more fearful, makes them hate each other, makes our society way less happy and less trusting. And so it's a big deal to charge something like that, and don't you think you should pull back until you can prove it? I guess that's my point.
Well, I do think I do prove it in my piece, because if you look at the statistics and you look at the data, police violence disproportionately affects black and brown bodies, and it always has. Throughout history.
Why are black cops more likely to shoot black suspects than white cops are? How does that fit into your neat little racism package? I don't get that. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, as police officers, they're part of the police system in this country, that no matter what race you are, you still are taught the same tactics.
But why are they more likely? I mean, it doesn't, look, again, I just want you to open your mind a little bit. This isn't college. And just like look at the facts and then draw your conclusions from those. And sometimes, you know, you reach a point where you're like, I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but it's not as simple as my professors told me it was. That's all I'm hoping that you'll conclude.
Okay, well, I think you're missing a point a little bit about what I was trying to get at in my article, and about the seriousness of police violence and why we need to address it in a meaningful way.
Okay. Well, I'm with you in some ways on that. The race stuff is wrong. So, Lisa, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, Chelsea Clinton is being sued. The famous author, journalist, humanitarian, television performer, philanthropist, hedge fund genius, political and moral leader, probably war hero too, who is famous for getting by entirely on her own merits, is now being accused of plagiarizing material for her newest book, She Persisted: 13 American Women Who Changed the World. Well, writer Christopher James Kimberly says the book rips off stories and quotations that were used in a book he wrote back in 2013 called A Heart is the Part That Makes Boys and Girls Smart. Kansas Trunzo is senior news editor at the Daily Mail, which broke this story, as it does so many, and she joins us tonight. Candace,
Hi,
thanks
Tucker.
for coming on.
Thank you. Great to be on.
So everyone on this program, anyway, is innocent until proven guilty. Tell us the charges against humanitarian leader Chelsea Clinton.
Well, she's charged with copyright infringement, as is her publisher, Penguin, which is a part of Random House, for stealing this little-known author from Albany, New York, his ideas about a book for kids that's kind of inspirational and tells stories of women who have overcome a great deal. He thinks that she stole his idea.
Now, I haven't read her book. I've only read about it. But some of the ideas, and with respect, seem, well, banal and ordinary. So is it possible that maybe the ideas are so obvious that she just kind of picked them up?
Well, it is possible, absolutely. And she has not responded to the charges yet, nor has the publisher. So we don't really know what she has to say about it. But the author, Kimberly, is saying that he actually he pushed his book on the publisher, tried to get it published by them, and he says that they took his idea, fed it to her, and then, of course, she interpreted it in her own way, but still, it was his idea, his concept.
Interesting. Now, Chelsea Clinton's been the recipient of many august awards, not surprisingly, given her awesome achievements, including recently a Lifetime Achievement Award. Does this imperil any of those awards? Do you think, if it turns out that she plagiarized, will any of those awards be rescinded, do you think? Well,
it's very possible. I think that, you know, we have a way to go to determine whether or not she actually did plagiarize or infringe on the copyright of Mr. Kimberly. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I mean, you know, this is her third book. Three does not seem to be a charm for Chelsea.
Right. It's just so interesting. I mean, writing a book typically takes a while. It's hard. And here she's been a hedge fund manager and a star over at NBC and, you know, been a political and moral leader on the road with her mom. Like, where does she find the time to crank out all these volumes?
Well, I mean, it's a very good question. I mean, she's very active in the Clinton Foundation. You might remember that. She is the vice chair of the foundation, but you still see her bopping around. They were in the Hamptons this week, she and her husband, Mark, who's, of course, out of a job since his hedge fund went kaput. So, yeah, they seem to find the time to have fun and kick around. They have 2 kids, of course.
But also to work toward world peace and end childhood obesity and the climate crisis. I mean, her powers of concentration must be remarkable.
Well, I think so. I mean, she really doesn't have that much to do. I mean, she's got a nanny for her kids,
right.
And she's been taken care of by mommy and daddy. So
yeah.
There is that.
But still, it's shocking when another idol turns out to perhaps have feet of clay. I mean, we're not judging here. Candace, thanks so much for the update on that. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Tucker.
It's great. Congressman David Cicilline is a Democrat from the proud yet small state of Rhode Island, and he joins us tonight in studio. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So you just heard a former CIA officer, who I think is a Democrat for whatever it's worth, saying, look, you know what, Russia doesn't have our interests at heart, which is obviously true, but let's be real. You can't not deal with Russia, and you can't denounce anyone who seeks to deal with Russia as a quisling, as a traitor to his country. So, like, will you be an adult on this?
Of course. Look, our relationship with many countries, including Russia, is complicated. I agree with the person you just had on, Brian, I think. But the reality is, the point he made is an important one. It is a complicated relationship, but we need to understand the Russian government interfered in our presidential election. We should be serious about that. We should conduct the ongoing investigations. We should hold them to account. We should sanction them. We should make it clear, don't you ever do this again to America.
Look, I mean, like, how honest do we want to be here?
No, let me just
how
say,
many is Russia the first government to interfere in our election? No, I'm just asking.
I'm
we're
sure
so outraged
it's not.
by this.
We should be outraged by the time that any foreign government interferes in presidential elections.
I'm with you there.
The reality is, it is very important that the Russians understand, by the way we respond to this interference, that America's not going to allow that. That we hold our democracy to be sacred.
Not going to allow what exactly?
Is not going to allow the government to participate in using hacked, stolen emails, putting Russian internet bots onto the internet to promote Russian RT propaganda. This is the conclusion, not of mine.
Wait, stop.
This is the conclusion
You're a member of Congress.
4 intelligence agencies and agreed to by 17.
I'm glad you've...
No, 17 who have agreed to the findings of 4.
You don't need to point to bureaucrats to justify your point.
No, I'm not talking about bureaucrats. These are intelligence professionals. Let's not diminish them. These are men and women who risk their lives to collect intelligence.
You know what? I have a right to question any assumption I want as an American citizen, whether it's by
a right to assert that I have confidence in our intelligence community.
I want to get back to your point, because no one ever gets in the details on this, because we're busy at 35,000 feet. They hacked the election. They're attacking our democracy. You're not a patriot if you disagree. You said RT is a problem. RT is a cable network. Now, it's a very left-wing one, by the way.
No,
I don't watch it. But, like, RT is, like, part of the American press corps. Do you think we should ban RT? What are you saying exactly?
I've had the opportunity, obviously, to have briefings. There have been unclassified documents that have been made available. It is the conclusion of our intelligence agencies, 4 intelligence agencies, and the agreement of 17 that the Russian government, led by Vladimir Putin, engaged in a very sophisticated effort to undermine the election of Hillary Clinton.
I get it, but let's be specific.
And the specifics are,
so what is RT? What role does RT play in this?
Promoted propaganda, fake stories that were then retweeted on the internet by a sophisticated thousands
So what's
Russian...
your point? So what you're saying is that if a news organization puts out stories
this isn't a news organization. This is not RT is a Russian propaganda machine.
Oh,
and
so
you know
should it be allowed?
That's not a question if it should be allowed.
Well, then what's your point?
The point is they facilitated the release of stolen emails, a hack into the DNC.
So the New York Times.
A hack into the DNC.
Wait, RT hacked into the DNC?
No, they facilitated the release.
How? What does that mean?
They facilitated...
My news organization ran those too.
No, excuse me.
Am I a criminal too?
The intelligence agencies of the Russian government hacked into the DNC, facilitated the release of those through WikiLeaks. They used
But what does RT have to do with that?
I'm talking about, in addition to RT promoting fake news, fake stories that are there.
So as a member of Congress, it's your job to decide what's fake, and we're going to punish people for writing stories you don't like?
It is our job to protect the integrity of our democracy. And if you're sitting there, Tucker, saying it's perfectly okay with you for the Russian government to interfere with presidential elections, I disagree with you.
Don't demagogue it. I'm not saying that, and you know I'm not. Well, I'm asking you specific questions that you don't want to answer.
No, I'm answering them.
You throw out RT as a problem, and I'm asking, in what way is RT a problem, and what should we do about it?
Well, there's nothing we can do about it. Russian propaganda can do this, but what we can do is protect our democracy from it. And we can
How can we protect our democracy from RT?
We can punish the Russians for what they did. We can impose sanctions.
For having a cable network here.
No, it's not a cable network. It's Russian propaganda that promotes false information that gets reposted on the internet, shared with viewers.
What role does Larry King play in this?
I have no idea.
He's like one of the lead anchors there. Is he? No, I'm serious.
No, I don't know about Larry King's show. I'm talking about the efforts of RT, which is a well-documented Russian
Are there any other
propaganda
news organizations
operation
that you think the U.S. Congress and the intelligence agencies ought to fight back against?
No, what I think we ought to fight back against is foreign governments interfering with our presidential election.
I guess look, here's the concern.
We can't stop RT from existing, but we can punish the Russian government for having the audacity to interfere with our election.
Well, name a story that ran on RT that you think
there was
they should be punished for running.
There was a story about all of the money raised in the Clinton campaign or by the Clinton Foundation is used by the Clintons personally. The Clinton campaign is funded by the same sources as ISIS. It was promoted as part of the Russian propaganda.
And that was wrong.
Of course it's wrong.
Okay, so you don't like a story in RT, so we need to punish the Russian government. No, that's not a question.
Not like it. We have to understand we are fighting against a very sophisticated.
Right, no, I get all the adjectives, but I just want to get to the core allegations.
This is Russian intelligence service trying to undermine. By the way, it's not just here. They did it in France. They tried to do it in Germany. They are trying to destabilize Western democracies around the world.
You're getting louder and broader. I'm trying to get you to get quieter and more precise.
Because it's important.
Okay, I know it's important, and because it is, I want specific answers. So, but let me just ask you an overview question, since that's where you want to go. Even if everything you say is right, I wonder if it speaks to the suffering of the people you represent in Providence. And there have been some Democrats, wise ones, in sotto voce voices saying, you know what? We're not going to win elections on this because it doesn't speak to the needs of ordinary people.
Absolutely.
We're spending all of our time on this stuff.
Tucker, you asked me to be on the show to talk about this because it's helpful to your viewing audience. This helps you. I'd like to talk about...
I don't think it actually is helpful to my viewing audience.
About
I think they're pretty sick of Russia.
Agenda.
I know I am.
I'd like to talk about the fact that we haven't done an infrastructure bill. I'd like to talk about passing my legislation to make college more affordable.
So then why is Nancy Pelosi out there hammering the Russia question? Why is Maxine Waters calling the Republicans unpatriotic?
You asked me about what I think. I think it is a tragedy.
It's your leader.
I'm responsible for my own conduct, and I continue to say that we should be focusing on the issues that matter to Rhode Islanders. That's creating good-paying jobs, repairing our infrastructure, making college more affordable, securing the future of Medicare and Social Security. That's what we should be talking about. The real tragedy.
But you can't help yourself because Donald Trump Jr. had dinner with the Russian
You don't want to invite me on that show to talk about those things because you want to talk about Russia because it's salacious. And people watch your show because
Actually, I think people are sick of it. I wish I could
have me on and talk about some of my legislation.
I guess I'm just too shallow, Congressman. Thank you for having me.
Here's the retired lieutenant colonel who suggested that anyone who disagrees with him on Russia would probably be very much like a Hitler sympathizer. Here's how it went.
Vladimir Putin hates us. He is malevolent. And he is as close to pure evil as I can find. He's also brilliant. And so I don't understand why any American would want an alliance with Russia. He's a killer.
Hard to see why he's a threat to us. And how many wars can we fight at once? How many people can we be in opposition to at once? Why not just accept that people who are bad people share our interests and side with them?
You sound like Charles Lindbergh in 1938 saying Hitler hasn't attacked us.
I beg your pardon? Slow down. Hey, slow down, Colonel. I'm not in any way. You cannot compare me to someone who would make apologies for Hitler. And I don't think Putin is comparable to Hitler.
I think Putin is. Look,
I think it's a grotesque overstatement,
Putin, he assassinates dissidents and journalists. He bombs women and children on purpose in Syria. He is as bad as Hitler. And yet you want us to align with the Russians, with Iran, with Assad.
I want us to act in America's interest and stop making shallow, sweeping moral claims about countries we don't fully understand and then hope everything will be fine in the end. If a country we don't like takes active steps to kill people who are a threat to us, I'm going to pause and applaud. Well, Peters is not alone in holding that view. You hear it all the time here in Washington. CNN analyst Robert Baer recently suggested anyone seeking collaboration with Russia on national security questions would have joined the Axis 75 years ago.
Clearly, the country that attacked us in the 2016 elections, you can't go into business with them. It is truly like, working with the Japanese after Pearl Harbor to, defend Hawaii, the air defense. It's just nutty.
Max Boot is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. He says he agrees with what Lieutenant Colonel Peters said last night, and he joins us tonight. Max, thanks a lot for coming on. Now, I think it's fair.
Me, Tucker.
I think it's fair to disagree about whether or not cooperating with Russia in the fight against ISIS is a good idea. But to dismiss anyone who doesn't share your view as a Nazi sympathizer seems cheap and a shortcut and not really befitting a self-described genius like yourself. Why would you say something like that?
Well, rest assured, Tucker, I'm not actually saying that you're a Nazi sympathizer. And the one thing that I would disagree with Colonel Peters about is I don't think that Putin is comparable to Adolf Hitler because there was only one Hitler. But what I do believe is that Mitt Romney was right. I was a foreign policy advisor on the Mitt Romney campaign in 2012 when he said that Putin is the #1 geopolitical threat that we face. I think that's true today. And I'm very disturbed, Tucker, when I see you at the top of the show, you and Mark Stein, yucking it up over the fact that Putin is interfering and meddling in our election process, undermining the sanctity of our elections to try to get Donald Trump elected, and that Donald Trump Jr., when he's told that Putin's government wants to support the Trump campaign, he doesn't pick up the phone to the FBI. He says, I love it. That, to me, is very disturbing. But what's even more disturbing is that you don't think it is disturbing.
Point by point here. First of all, I'm sorry that laughter disturbs you. And you can debate whether or not
this is not funny,
Donald
Tucker.
Trump,
I'm sorry. This is an assault on our democracy.
I get your view there, Max. You can debate whether or not what he did is a crime or falls under the Espionage Act or not, but to dismiss people who disagree with you as immoral, which is your habit, isn't a useful form of debate. It's a kind of moral preening, and it's a little odd coming from you, who really has been consistently wrong in the most flagrant and flamboyant way for over a decade. And so you have to sort of wonder, like,
what have I been wrong about, Tucker? What have I been wrong about?
Having watched you carefully and known you for a long time, I recall vividly when you said that if we were to topple the governments of Afghanistan and Iraq, the region would be much safer, and the people who took their place would help us in the global war on terror. Of course, it didn't happen. I was there when you said that.
On me, Tucker.
I'm not getting holier than thou. I'm merely saying
you supported the invasion of
Iraq,
too.
You have been consistently wrong, and many people have been wrong. I've been wrong about a ton of things, but you try to learn your lesson. But when you get out there in the New York Times and say, we really should have done more to depose Gaddafi because, Libya is going to be better when that happens. And then to hear you say we need to knock off the Assad regime and things will be better in Syria, you sort of wonder, like, well, maybe you should choose another profession, selling insurance, house painting, something you're good at. I guess that's kind of the point. Is there no sanction
Tucker,
for being as wrong as you
I would be happy. I would be happy to hold up my record of foreign policy prognostication against yours. And by the way, to underline the fact, you supported the Iraq War, and then when it went bad, you opposed it, which doesn't take any moral courage or perspicacity.
No, I actually began to oppose it when I went there, when it began, and saw that it wasn't
right now you are supporting Donald Trump, and you're laughing about the fact that Russia is interfering in our election process. That, to me, is immoral.
Okay, so let's have it's immoral. Not just a disagreement, it's immoral. You're a moral authority, a religious figure now, actually, casting moral aspersions on those who disagree.
Save your sarcasm, okay?
No, it's heartfelt. It's not sarcasm. I have contempt
is a repudiation of all that the conservative movement and the Republican Party has stood for. When I was growing up, Ronald Reagan warned about the evil empire. Right now, you're yucking it up at the evil empire interfering in our elections.
It's a different empire, Max. And actually, we can debate to what extent
Vladimir Putin is a former KGB man, and you're applauding what he's doing.
Since you have some sinecure at the Council on Foreign Relations, let me ask you policy questions, if I can, just for 1 second.
It's not as lucrative as your sinecure at Fox News, Tucker.
Let me ask you a question. If we were to follow the course of action you're suggesting we follow, you're demanding we follow, on moral grounds, having, as I said...
What course of action is that,
Which is to get rid of the Assad regime, because you fear his presence will empower Iran, which you see as a major problem in the world. What would happen then? Who would run that country? I asked Ralph Peters that question last night. He said, the Kurds. Do you think the Kurds would run Syria once we depose Bashar al-Assad?
No, I don't. I think it'd be very difficult to do now in any case. I think it should have been done in 2011, 2012, when you would have had a free Syrian army with moderate Syrians come to the fore.
What do you think we should do now?
What's your advice, Tucker? Should we collaborate with Russia in committing war crimes in Syria? Is that your advice in furthering Iranian hegemony over Syria, a country that is dedicated to death to America? Is that your advice at the moment?
Yeah. I think you're not
choosing... As you know, I was very opposed to the Obama policy, and I'm opposed to the Trump policy.
Well,
but you seem to be a cheerleader for allowing the Russians and the Iranians to do whatever they want in Syria.
I'm a cheerleader for Russia and Iran. This is exactly the style of debate that prevents people from taking you seriously.
Am I wrong,
Because
Tucker?
rather than that I'm cheerleading for Iran and Russia, it's a grotesque thing to say. Of course I'm not. I think I wouldn't live in either country. I disapprove of their policies.
You don't think that we should make common cause with Russia in Syria, as you've said repeatedly?
Let me ask
You're repudiating that viewpoint?
Let me ask you this, since you're, I think, also a historian. The Congress of the United States in 1941 voted for Lend-Lease, which sent billions and billions of dollars to Joseph Stalin in armaments and food because the Congress of the United States believed Hitler was a greater threat than Stalin. Were they Stalinists when they did that?
You know, Tucker, this is pure sophistry on your part.
It's not sophistry. It's a sincere question. Why don't you answer
Will you let me finish? Will you let me answer your question, Tucker? I will be the first to admit that sometimes you have to make common cause with repugnant regimes, and that's what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did with Joseph Stalin when you have common goals.
But
we do not share common goals with Russia. We do not share common goals with Russia because Russia is trying to further the murderous Bashar Assad regime. They are trying to further Iranian hegemony in Syria. That is not our goal. Iran believes in death to Israel. They believe in death to America. We should not be cooperating with them. We should not become complicit in Russian war crimes.
Okay, let me just ask you factual questions. And I'm not sure
Russia, by the way, is also undermining our electoral process, which you don't seem to care about, Tucker.
Okay, the moral preening and the generalizations are tiresome. Let me ask you a specific question. You say
your lack of moral judgment is tiresome to me. Your lack of moral judgment about what Russia is up to, I find to be offensive.
This is why nobody takes you seriously. But I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourself by answering this question. You say
Tucker,
Iran is a primary threat to us.
You're the one who's not taken seriously.
Tell me how many Americans in the United States have been murdered by terrorists backed by Iran since 9/11.
Oh, so you're taking the pro-Iranian line, essentially. Is that right?
Well,
what about the fact that hundreds of American troops...
You're humiliating yourself, Max.
Why don't you answer the question? Hundreds of American troops have been murdered in Iraq by Iran and its proxies. I also recall that in the 1980s, hundreds of American Marines were murdered in Beirut by Iran. Do you not care about those deaths, Tucker?
Do I not care about those deaths? It's almost impossible to have a conversation with you because your responses are so childish. Of course I care about the deaths. I'm trying to get to the right answer.
Your responses, Tucker, are ridiculous, okay?
I'm trying to get to what the best thing for the United States to do is. You're trying to argue a pro-Iranian line that we don't need to be worried about Iran? Is that what you're trying to say? Arguing. Oh, slow down. I'm not arguing a pro-Iranian line. I'm not pro-Iran. I'm not pro-Russia. And I'm certainly not arguing that Iran is a good place or doesn't pose a threat to the United States. I'm merely saying,
so what are you arguing, Tucker?
Let me tell you, in a world full of threats, you create a hierarchy of them. You decide which is the worst, and then you go down the list. And my only question to you is,
right up there. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that Russia is a threat to us?
I think the idea that Russia is in the top 5 is absurd, and it makes me wonder about your judgment. But I'm giving you a chance to answer the question, which is,
it's absurd for you to say that Russia is not in the top 5. They're the only country that can destroy us with a nuclear strike.
Okay. I'm beginning to think that your judgment has been clouded by ideology. I don't fully understand where it's coming from, but I'll let our viewers decide.
Tucker, I think your judgment has been clouded by ratings because you feel compelled to be a spokesman for Donald Trump in order to win ratings on the Fox News channel.
That's pretty funny. I actually vehemently disagreed with our airstrikes. With our airstrikes in Syria, and the president called for them, and I'm against them. I'm actually arguing principle, but more than anything, I'm arguing for the right to ask honest questions without being denounced as a quisling. But you are incapable of giving a factual answer, and so instead you attack the character of the person who asked the question. And I think our viewers can see that, and it's beneath contempt.
I did not.
Max,
I did not attack your character.
I gave you a chance,
what you were saying
and you
was
did
immoral.
not turn in in any sense, impressive performance. Thanks for joining us anyway. I thought it was interesting. If you watch CNN in the last couple of days, you will be up to date on the latest installments in their ongoing Russia conspiracy soap opera that's been going on for 7 months. Here's the latest if you haven't seen it. Apparently, Donald Trump Jr. met with a Russian lawyer who said she had damaging information about Hillary Clinton. This happened during the campaign. Apparently, the meeting was a bust in the end. There was no good information about Hillary. That's what Donald Trump Jr. has said. And the two wound up talking mostly about adoption. Trump Jr. left without getting any dirt on the rival campaign, let alone making any agreement to sell out his country. But to CNN's Chris Cuomo, it was the story of the century. Here he is trying to explain how important it is to Trump advisor Kellyanne Conway.
I don't know what should be more troubling to you, that he would take a meeting not knowing who it was, but it was important enough to bring Jared or Manafort, or that Donald Jr. would knowingly meet with someone with Kremlin connections on the basis of getting Oppo research about Hillary Clinton.
First of all, you keep on saying opposition research the way you guys constantly vomit words like collusion and Russian interference and affecting the election, all of which you have no evidence.
Even if you accept everything he says is true, and there's a credibility issue because he's changed his story twice, I'm sure you do.
Not.
He's changed his story.
I admire your moxie sitting there with the CNN Chiron right near you talking about credibility issues. Given a couple weeks you guys have had. You're invested in months now as a network in something that simply doesn't exist. You want to talk about Russia, I want to talk about America.
Yeah, I know, but there are also
disagree.
reasons for why you don't want to talk about Russia, and I do. It is my responsibility to cover things that matter to the American people. The media matters. We shouldn't disrespect each other. We should give each other the benefit of the doubt. And we should pay attention to everything. It's not, first of all, it's my show. This is what I do, as I talk to the television.
The snarky looks, the furrowed brows, the rolling of the eyes from so many people on your panels, and you know it. You guys have made a business decision to be anti-Trump. Okay, the country
and you
can
guys
see
have
that.
also made a decision. You've made a decision to be antagonistic towards the media, to lump us all together, to rally your followers, to think that we're bad people and attack us online.
With a free press comes a fair press and a fully responsible press.
Well, that was kind of revealing. Did you notice that at the end? Kellyanne Conway says CNN has made a business decision to become the anti-Trump network. It's kind of a strong charge since, of course, that, if true, would bear no resemblance at all to journalism. And yet Chris Cuomo does not bother to deny that or even seem surprised by the charge. But then why would he? Because it's true. The whole interview lasted more than half an hour, and yet there is more. Cuomo went on Facebook to boast about how great he was. Watch this.
Yes, we did a very long interview with Kellyanne Conway. Why? Because we care. And to those who will say, oh, you're too hostile to the president, and who else would give Kellyanne that amount of time? Who else? Nobody. Why did we do it? Because we believe in the conversation. We believe in things being better. We believe in a non-hostile dynamic.
We may start doing just a weekly series of these Facebook posts. They're just so good. It's just gold. By the way, none of this seems to be working, though, unfortunately for CNN. They recently dipped below Nick at Night sitcom reruns in the primetime ratings, for those of you scoring at home. That's not good. I want to bring an update tonight from the Democratic People's Republic of the Bay Area. A few months ago, we told you about a terrifying robbery on a BART commuter train. It's like the subway in the Bay Area, in which a mob of 40 or more people swooped into a car, terrorized and robbed the passengers, and then took off and were never found. After the attack, BART refused to release a video of any of it. They said some of the perpetrators were minors. How'd they know that? They didn't know who they were. Well, it won't surprise you to learn that suppressing information about crime, not an effective way to fight it. In the past few weeks, there have been 2 more instances in which mobs have robbed and beaten up passengers on BART. Once again, no videos being released. This time, why? They're telling us why. BART has announced that videos are being held from the public because, we're quoting, to release these videos would create a high level of racially insensitive commentary, and in addition would create a racial bias in riders against minorities on trains, close quote. In other words, the public is too racist to be told what actually happened. BART administrators would rather endanger passengers than risk being called insensitive. For real. Do you recognize that attitude? It's everywhere. It's the same impulse that leads the Swedish government to hide official crime statistics from the public, or Angela Merkel to throw open the German borders to people who hate Germany and then publish anyone who complains about it. Across the world, our leaders show they care far more about appearing virtuous than about the well-being of their own people. They'd rather you were attacked on the subway than be accused of bigotry themselves. They don't care about you. At least the people who run the BART out in San Francisco admit they don't care about you. Well, speaking of California, a place that is now on the brink of becoming the country's first sanctuary state, the Senate bill there, 54, the number is, cleared a major hurdle to passage last week and now just awaits approval from a single committee in California's heavily Democratic Assembly. In other words, it's likely to pass. If it is, that bill would bar federal agents, ICE agents, from all state jails and would block federal agents from accessing state databases related to immigration. It's a big deal. Sandra Hutchins is sheriff of Orange County in California. She says the state's effort to become a sanctuary state is not good policy. It's about sticking it to the administration. Sheriff Hutchins joins us tonight. So, Sheriff, give us the parameters of this. This would basically put California as a state in active opposition to federal immigration law. Is that an overstatement?
I don't think that's an overstatement. You know, we've been cooperating with ICE and with the federal government for many, many, many years, very cooperatively, very effectively. And we're talking about serious crimes, serious criminals who have committed a crime. They've been tried here, they've done their time, and we've been notifying ICE of these individuals so that they can go through deportation proceedings. Senate Bill 54, Senator De Leon said this is the only thing he can think of to do to stop the quote-unquote Trump deportation machine. And that is clearly not an issue. That is not an issue. This is a totally political issue, and it does not take into account the public safety of Californians, which I deeply care about, and that is the real issue. There's no need for this bill. Things have been working fine without it. The author has stated that this will prevent local law enforcement from doing immigration enforcement on the streets. We never have done immigration enforcement on the streets. We have no desire to do that. And we've not been asked to do that by the Trump administration. So this bill would prohibit me as a sheriff from notifying ICE of someone who's in custody for potentially felony, driving under the influence, domestic violence, human trafficking, rape of an unconscious person. I would not be able to notify them. They would be released to the street. And then what will happen is ICE will go out. They're not going to let these people go. They're going to go out and they're going to do search warrants on homes. And then people who are here illegally or undocumented and have not committed crimes, they're going to get scooped up too. So this bill does not do what it says it does. It places additional residents at risk, law enforcement, perhaps people who are here undocumented but have not committed crimes. So ICE is still trying to focus on those, the priority enforcement, those individuals who have repeatedly committed offenses, re-entered the country, have criminal records, and the fact that we can't notify them and have to release them to the street is not acceptable to me.
So, I mean, it's not like illegal aliens in California are having a tough time anyway. California has more illegals in any state by far. I mean, a huge percentage of your population is there illegally. So what was the need that gave rise to this bill, or is it purely a symbolic act aimed at the administration?
It's a symbolic act aimed at the administration, in my opinion, but more importantly, it places Californians at risk of being impacted by these criminals who are getting released to the street.
Wait, so if the state of California can say to the feds, we're just ignoring your law, then why can't Orange County say to the state of California, we're ignoring your law? I mean, would you abide by these terms, or would you notify the feds if you apprehended an illegal?
We've already asked the question. We've asked legal counsel. Cal State Sheriffs, which I'm a member, has asked legal counsel, and we would be subject to being prosecuted if we didn't follow the state law. But it puts us in a you make a great point. It puts us in a terrible position of violating federal law, not cooperating with federal authorities. And we work on task forces with ICE. We work on a sexual exploitation task force. This bill would require us to report everything we do to the Attorney General of the state of California. These are very great cooperative task forces that deal with a lot of crime. Our registered sex offenders, a lot of those are undocumented aliens. This would really impact our ability to fight crime in our communities. So
California is cool with ignoring federal law, but ignore their laws, and you're in trouble. Good luck, Sheriff Hutchins. We'll welcome you in the East Coast anytime you want to come. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Coming up, it's the... Well, a group of left-wing activists in Chicago is training itself for war. It's called the Haymaker Collective, and it says that Donald Trump's election has caused a surge of fascist violence in America, and they want to establish their own anti-fascist gym to teach the left how to fight back. Nyla is a member of the Haymaker Collective and is a participant in the new gym project. It's not a real name, by the way, but a pseudonym we were given. Nyla joins us tonight. Nyla, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So, I'm here to take you seriously. You're starting a gym to prepare yourself for the coming war? For the conflict? What are you preparing yourself for?
The conflict has already been established. We've seen since 2016 there's been a 20% increase in hate crimes, both nationally and in the city of Chicago. We know that there's certain bodies that are vulnerable to attack, that there's been an increase in racism and xenophobia, and that we feel that it's necessary for us to learn self-defense skills. So rather than feeling frightened and isolated and alone, that we can come together, build strength in solidarity with one another with an autonomous gym formation.
Look, I'm for free association. I'm for gyms. I'm not, I guess, against this. I just sort of wonder if your concern isn't misplaced. I mean, Chicago is a really dangerous place. I think you've had about 2,000 shootings so far just this year. I don't think any of them are perpetrated by right-wingers that I know of, or Trump supporters, any of them. So maybe you've got other things to worry about.
Well, according to statistics, we do have something to worry about. The Cato Institute records that the vast majority of violent extremism comes from right-wing white nationalists. We also know that according to statistics, 80% of deadly terrorist incidents that happen within the United States are perpetuated by people who feel that other bodies, different people, races, and religions don't belong.
Right.
So when I think about the threats that I'm facing,
those are made up. So for
to
whatever it's worth, I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, but those are totally made up statistics, and you should spend some time looking at them. But let me just ask you this: of the 2,000 shootings
you are welcome
in Chicago,
to look at. You are welcome to look at the statistics. They're provided by the Cato Institute. They're also provided by California State University. I also have a number of statistics that are provided by
but let me just ask you
the
this,
Southern Poverty Law Center.
Okay. Oh, okay. Kind of the bottom line, I guess. But if we could just bring it from the national to the local. You live in Chicago, which, as I just said, I think this is a correct statistic, has had about 2,000 murders just in the first 7 months, less than 7 months of the year. How many, rather shootings, how many of those 2,000 shootings were perpetrated by right-wingers, do you think?
Again, you can look at the Chicago Police Department. They do collect information, but we're more interested in the hate crimes that have been occurring
were
to people like myself.
Okay, right, but I mean, when people are shooting 2,000 people, okay, shot, and I don't think any of them were bias crimes against people like you, as you just put it. I don't think any of those were Trump supporters pulling the trigger. Do you know otherwise?
Carlson, if you don't know, then I'm not going to sit here and give you statistics, but I will tell you that the stories that are making me afraid and fearful
is the answer,
when I take the bus, when I take the bus home alone by myself on public transportation, I don't feel safe because just May 26th in Portland on the light rail, there were 2 black women who were approached and confronted by a white man who calls himself a patriot. 3 other white men came to those 2 women's defense, and they were stabbed in the neck, and 2 of them died.
Right, I saw the story. It was an awful story. But I'm just saying, in the city that you live in, because you don't live in Portland, Oregon, you live in Chicago, Illinois, again, I made the point, but you've had 2,000 shootings, and none of them were by Trump supporters, but that doesn't bother you. But a stabbing on a train in Portland, Oregon is the reason you're afraid to ride the train in Chicago. It seems a little bit disassociated. Where are you on the question of gun ownership?
I mean, well, Tucker, here's the thing. First of all, on the question of what we're doing, we're providing a self-defense gym so that people may learn martial arts.
Yep.
So that people can learn martial arts, so people like me don't feel like they can't ride public transportation or go to their houses of worship without being harassed.
I'm not a shrink or anything, but I'm just worried that your fears may be a little bit overblown. Like, you've got a terrible gang problem in Chicago, but does that scare you at all? Like, if you were to go to the south side of Chicago, would you be worried about Trump supporters down there?
Tucker, I already live on the south side, number 1. Number 2, I'm
How many Trump supporters in your neighborhood?
Quite a few. I'm sure you can look it up. But on the question of gun ownership, we can look that even owning a gun doesn't protect one. Philando Castile was a licensed gun owner, and he told that to the officer while he was shot on Facebook Live in front of his 4-year-old daughter and his partner. So the question of gun ownership should be something that you should be giving to the National Rifle Association as to why they're not taking up in arms.
Can I ask a question? If so, you're like against the system and you think the system's rotten and racist and all that stuff, but you want only the cops and other government officials who you believe are racist to have guns? How does that work exactly, Nyla?
I don't understand your question. What we're saying is that there's no political party.
Well, so if you think America is institutionally racist, why do you think only government officials, police, National Guard, soldiers ought to have guns? I mean, why wouldn't you want a gun too? I don't understand why you're against private gun ownership if you think our country's racist.
If you're bringing me on your show to talk about the project that we're starting, the project we're starting is a self-defense gym so that people can learn hand-to-hand self-defense tactics.
I got it. It's just like guns are more effective than karate chops, so I'm just sort of wondering where you were on the gun thing.
Okay, well, on the question of guns, we don't have an answer because what we're doing is starting a project with where we are. And what we know is that we need to grow strength together. We have to learn the responses physically to respond to some of these incidents that are happening. The question for me, again, is not on people shooting me with guns. The question is incidents like Nabra Hassanin, who was murdered while she was walking from her mosque in Washington, D.C. to a McDonald's for breakfast with a group of other teenagers.
Was she killed by a Trump supporter? Oh, wasn't she? I thought she was killed by an illegal alien, wasn't she?
She was killed by a man who decided to go after her with a bat.
Yeah, that was not a Trump supporter, actually. That was an illegal alien. Bad example. I'm sure there are others. Now, we're out of time. Unfortunately, it was great to talk to you.
I don't know why.
Sorry. JFK Jr. was just aggressively attacked by John Oliver over on HBO for his views on vaccines. He joins us next to respond to that.